Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us once again here in the Kabbalah Education Center. I'm Gianni, and I'm here with
Chris.
Chris. Nice to meet you, Chris.
It's all right, Gianni. Long day.
Mother's Day. So,
also, happy
yes.
Mother's Day to many of you. Congratulations.
So it's good to be with you all once again, and today we are talking about the optimal sources for our spiritual advancement. Chris, you have something to read now, or something you want to read later on?
I do, and it's from Attaining the Worlds Beyond.
All right.
It's a book from Dr. Michael Lightman, or Rav, and it's on page 9. I just took it just because it fits into the topic today, and I love this book. It's very dear to me. Not feeling well on Jewish New Year's Day in September 1991, my Rav called me to his bedside and handed me his notebook, saying, "Take it and learn from it." The following morning, my teacher perished in my arms, leaving me and many of his other disciples without guidance in this world. He used to say, "I want to teach you to turn to the Creator rather than to me, because He is the only strength, the only source of all that exists, the only one who can really help you, and He awaits your prayers for help. When you seek help in your search for freedom from the bondage of this world, help in elevating yourself above this world, help in finding the self, and help in determining your purpose in life, you must turn to the Creator, who sends you all those aspirations in order to compel you to turn to Him."
Yes, so when our teacher's teacher, the Rabash, can just click out of that, passed away, he left to our teacher, Dr. Lightman, all of the manuscripts of Bala Sulam, and one of the most important books, this one here, called Shemati, which was the private lessons that Rabash received from his teacher. And since we're talking about books, I want to go to a clip from our teacher, Dr. Lightman, talking about the importance of Kabbalistic books.
Cobb TV. Watch your life make sense.
Today, all of us read from the computer. We don't write letters, but we send email. We watch television and movies, which are also electronic. Everything's electronic. As if man has no need for paper. And although we still make newspapers, however, people are more and more attracted to what they see on the screen. Kabbalists used paper, a scroll, wood, or rock in order to write on it, in order to write what they have, since the written letters have a special power. And thus, a book will never lose its value, its importance. At least not the books which have to do with the spiritual inner wisdom. In them, a person will find the internality which exists, lays in between the letters and the words, something which he will not be able to find on the screen. Why? Because this substance, the matter out of which a book is made of, and the written letters, they're against the spiritual root of book, author, story. The thought of creation and all which stems from it in the final correction, the whole process we undergo, and the happy end we come to where we reach Him and cleave on to Him, all this appears in the stories. Not to look at the wisdom that's written here, but to achieve Him, to cleave on to Him, to take on His attributes, to take His place, to achieve His thought, the thought of the author, which is the Creator.
Yes, so the Kabbalistic texts are our only connection in this world to an upper world, the spiritual world. The Creator doesn't exist. There's no Creator in our world. That's why we don't see Him. And also, when this life ends, there is also no Creator. We exist on the plane of this reality, and we have to complete the plan of creation that exists for us in our world. We learned before that we cascaded down into this world through 5 worlds, through 125 degrees. And after these 5 worlds, we have our world. Adam Kedmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. And here are also 125 degrees of concealment of the Creator, which means that we come down and we start existing in this reality as basically beasts. The reality develops through still, vegetative, animate, until the human being. And basically people were like animals. They felt nature the same way you have, when there's a tsunami or something, the animals can feel that the tsunami's coming, and they go up to the mountains, and the human beings are still on the ground, and the tidal wave is basically consuming them. So human beings used to live close to nature and be just as animals, only they gradually distanced even further from nature and further from any sensation of an upper reality, and basically lived like animals until one person who was called Adam, who felt that there's probably more to life, and he started researching his reality, his connection with others. And in this connection to others that he started researching, he discovered something called a Creator, meaning that nobody else felt this. And when he discovered it, he was the first one to write about it. And he wrote a book called The Angel Raziel HaMalak. And you have to try to imagine this state where we're living in this reality. We've never heard of religion. We've never heard of, people looked up to the skies and they were worried about maybe pleasing some god of the stars or pleasing some mountain god. But the idea of a creator, of one creator that controls the whole of reality and has some type of relationship to man, this was a new concept that came only out of the books that Kabbalists wrote. And before that, people had no such idea, because they had no such pattern in reality from which to come up with such an idea. So it's not like how we're living today, where we have all of the religions and so all sorts of methods to this theory called the Creator. But truly we're in the same state, where no Creator exists, and all I can do is basically kind of imagine that I'm speaking to a Creator or pray to a Creator and hope someone's listening. But the truth is we have no connection to that. And we can't have a connection to that. And the reason why is because of this concatenation of degrees that was intentionally done in order for us to reach a state where there is no Creator, truly no Creator, no sensation of Him. And from this reality that we live in now, where we have both no sensation of the Creator and no ability to reach Him and no contact with the upper worlds and no way to discover how we could even begin traversing the distance between us and that spiritual world. Besides that, we also have religions that talk to us, that tell us there could be something, there could be a creator, either you believe in it but in general, we have to discover the creator through this connection with the upper reality that is only in the Kabbalistic texts. And Kabbalistic books, the Kabbalists can't write them in any other way. Even these terms, Adam Kedmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, the Sfirot, Keter, Hokmah, Bina, Zeran, Pen, Malhut. When we discover the upper world, we discover these things that for now seem very dry to us. Partsufim, worlds, what are they talking about? I remember my teacher once said that one day you'll hear the word Yesod. Yesod is one of the Sfirot, and you'll simply start crying. These things are such juicy pleasures that we can't imagine what they are. And we can't imagine what pleasure is, because also the pleasure that Kabbalah talks about, Kabbalists say that we've never experienced pleasure. So even when we say in Kabbalah that we're a will to receive pleasure, first of all, we don't know what pleasure is. So besides not knowing what a creator is, we also don't even know what pleasure is. So we really have no hands and legs with respect to what Kabbalists speak about. And our only link are these books. So we start reading, and they have a few approaches to us. They have one approach that is called the language of the Sfirot and Partsufim. This was developed later on in the Kabbalistic writings, more by Bala Sulam, the Ari, a little bit in the Zohar, a little bit in Abraham's book, the Book of Creation, Sefer Yetzirah, and a few other texts here and there. They have something that is called the language of the Torah, which is a language that relates to us, seemingly more relates to our psychology, the language of legends, and the language of laws. But all of these things speak only about an upper reality that we discover inside of us. And when we discover that reality, we discover that the Kabbalists couldn't have written it any other way, that it had to be exactly those words, exactly that language. And there, even if I go back just to what Chris read in the beginning, that books really, they speak about our inner structure. And whether we talk about the Sfirot or the Torah, we discover that these are talking about paths to attainment through these upper 125 degrees that each and every person goes through in the same exact order, the same way. Now, why does Kabbalah, if we read the books of the Ari, if we read Bala Sulam's study of the 10 Sfirot, I think we read something last week from Petiha. Why does it seem so dry? It seems scientific, not juicy. We can read something actually from, just to get a taste, from the preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah. I'll just open it up. Item 156 on 631. It has been explained that by raising Man for the second Ibur, which is conception, the Partsufim of Atzilut obtain the illumination of Mokin from Ab Sag De'ak, which lowers the lower hay from Nikve Naim back to her place at the pay, as in Simsum Aleph. Thus they regain the Ahap de Kelim and the Neshama Haya Yachida of lights. So when we read that, why does it seem like Chinese? Because it's not an interesting intellectual study about our world that, at least if it's about physics and the planets and the way they move, I can somehow imagine it. Rather, it speaks only of pleasure, only of fulfillment. It's not something that I can appreciate from a distance, like maybe I have a mild appreciation for chemistry or physics. Rather, these are things that I need to actually feel and experience. And it's talking truly about a kli, meaning a desire to receive pleasure, and the way that the pleasure enters that kli. The circumstances under which it is possible for us to actually receive pleasure. Because we've talked about how we have a desire to receive. And the whole reality is filled with the light. And even though we have a tough life and we have to exert a lot in order to try to receive this light, anytime it comes into direct contact with our desire, there's immediately a short circuit. So we can never receive the pleasure directly. So Kabbalistic texts, the whole thousands of pages of Kabbalistic writings, are all about the process through which we can receive this pleasure. And the process changes depending on how big the pleasures are. I need new texts that detail more and more how I scrutinize, how I organize my desire with respect to that pleasure. And I organize something called a masak, a screen. And through this, I can actually experience pleasure. So this is the entire wisdom of Kabbalah, how to do that. So let's go to a little reading by Bala Sulam from a text called Disclosing a Portion, Covering 2. So this is talking about why the Kabbalists concealed this wisdom. If the whole wisdom of Kabbalah is just about us receiving pleasure, and we all want to receive pleasure, and Kabbalah is talking about boundless pleasures, meaning the source of all pleasures is the Creator, the light, and what we chase our entire lives is just a fraction, a whisper of that light that maybe I'll go to a movie and enjoy. A lot of people probably went to movies today on Mother's Day. Maybe I'll eat a steak and enjoy that. All of the pleasures that we can imagine in our world are just the way that our vessels can sort of receive the light, or even imagine to possibly receive the light. They don't actually receive the light, but all of the pleasures we imagine are just some limitation on the endless light that exists. So if there is a source for infinite pleasure, and that if I reveal this source, there's no limit to me, that it won't be that I just receive a movie or a steak or some wine, but I can receive the actual source of pleasure. Why do Kabbalists conceal this? And let's read from Bala Sulam. There is an idiom among great sages when they come to disclose a profound matter. They begin their words with, I am disclosing a portion and covering 2 portions. Our sages took great care not to utter words needlessly, as our sages instructed, a word is a rock, silence is 2. This means that if you have a priceless word whose worth is 1 rock, know that not saying it is worth 2 rocks. This refers to those uttering needless words without pertinent content or use, except to decorate the tongue in the eyes of the beholders. This was strictly forbidden in the eyes of our sages, as it is known to those who examine their words. Hence we must be attentive to understand this common idiom of theirs. Okay, so in short, we are built in such a way that until we become despaired of a certain kind of pleasure, we're not able to look to a greater pleasure. So as long as humanity was going through a process by which it had everything to look forward to, people weren't ready to receive the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's like right now, I have a 7-month-old baby, and she's used to mom's milk. She's never had regular food. And therefore, we have to gradually associate her with new pleasures. First, we start out with something kind of sweet, like applesauce. She tastes it, it's like disgusting to her. And then another thing, peas, butternut squash, because we can only appreciate a pleasure that is adjacent to us, to the pleasures that we're used to. It's best to look at children because we can see really how we work. That, first of all, the baby also didn't want mom's milk. It was used to receiving through the blood and not through the mouth. So it's difficult at first to get them to enjoy milk. Then all they want to drink is mom's milk. Mom's milk is so disgusting that actually sometimes I need to check and see if the milk is good, because we have like a bottle of milk in the fridge. And I smell it, but the milk itself is so gross that I have to give it to my wife to smell, because I just want to vomit as soon as I smell it.
Nice.
Sorry, it's the truth. But it's something truly disgusting. But this is all that the baby has a taste for. And truly, with us, this is how we are as well. That there are great pleasures that exist. We're surrounded with them. We're already in the king's palace. But we can only taste them if we will start tasting them gradually. And and we see with the baby that you usually have to stuff it. You have to put it in the right environment. You have to sit it in the chair. You have to talk to it. You have to sweet talk it. You have to do the little airplane. You have to let it lick it. My baby is more interested in licking the bottle for the food than to lick the food itself. So you have to gradually, and this is how we are truly with the books of the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's really like a baby licking the bottle of applesauce. We can't taste what's in it yet. And the higher the source, the more difficult it is for us to taste it. And this is why there are these different sources that Kabbalists create. So first, there were sources that were just for Kabbalists. They weren't intended for anyone to reach spirituality through them alone, but only along with the teacher. And these are basically all of the Kabbalistic texts up until the writings of the Ari. The Torah, we have the Torah from Moses. This text was sufficient for those who were born in that generation. It was sufficient as a Kabbalistic text that those who were reading it would have understood that this is talking about spirituality. This is not talking about history or anything else. Later on, it had to be developed for the next generation, and they wrote the book of Zohar. And the Zohar was actually written for our generation, but it was concealed and used only by Kabbalists. It was found in a fish market. Somebody was in the fish market and they found all of the pages. They found fish wrapped in these pages. Somebody gathered them. It was actually somebody, a Kabbalist, who understood what it was. And he gathered them, and this book was passed from teacher to student throughout the generation, circulated just among Kabbalists, until it reached the hands of someone called Moshe de Leon. And when Moshe de Leon died, his wife had no money, and books were very valuable back then. So she sold it, and she made a lot of money off of it. Later on, there was the Ari, and the Ari was the one who really opened up this language called the language of the Sfirot. And this is truly what we need in our generation. But the Ari's writings were concealed as well. In fact, when the Ari died, he told his students, except for one, Haim Vital, he told them all, just stop studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. I forbid you to study. Only Haim can study. His writings were he actually didn't write anything. His students wrote. And there were 3 basic bodies of writing, and some of those were buried in the grave with the Ari. Some were in the hands of another Kabbalist, some were in the hands of Haim Vital. And because they were dispersed, nobody really knew what to make of them. The students didn't know what to make of them. Even though the Ari wrote about the entire upper reality and put it into a system, without seeing the system as one complete whole, you couldn't understand anything about that system. And this is why Bala Sulam had to come along, who actually was the incarnation of the soul of the Ari. And he systematized these writings and put them in a way that one could make sense of them. He organized them into a general picture. And he even wrote a very special article for us called Patiha, Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah. And in this pretty short article, relatively short to the writings of the Ari, Bala Sulam puts into simple words the entire structure of creation. Now it seems like, he just draws 125 degrees, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah. Nobody had this picture until Bala Sulam, of the system of the worlds and the way they concatenate from above downwards, let alone how we rise through these worlds from below upwards. So Bala Sulam put into this short article basically like an E equals MC squared, something that explains the whole of reality, and he put it in a system of cause and consequence. That one who comes to this book, even without any understanding of the upper worlds, with a little bit of guidance, we can build this picture in our heads of how, just like kids organize something very simply, then later they learn more and more details, we can get this whole picture, which we'll study in the next semester in the structure of creation classes. This whole system of worlds, how they go up, how they go down, how the Masak works, how you have light, inner light, screen, reflected light, and how through this we come to equivalence with the Creator. So let's go to another reading by Bala Sulam.
Yeah, before we do that, I'd like to say hello to everybody from Elsie, Laura, Joyce, Aaron, Zarko, Northman, Namat. And it was good to see you, Namat, in San Francisco the other night, and Frank, and some others. So hello to all of you from your fellow students.
Okay, great. If you could read, Chris, because my throat's not going to last.
Which one are we going to go to?
This one.
Alrighty.
So we have it on the screen.
As we learned previously, Kabbalah develops in parallel to the development of the will to receive. And
No.
You want up there? Oh, okay,
The
sorry.
Wisdom of Truth.
Source will be from Kabbalah from the Student on page 41, the teaching of Kabbalah and its essence. The wisdom of truth must be passed on from generation to generation. Each generation adds a link to its former, and thus the wisdom evolves. Moreover, it becomes more suitable for expansion in the public.
Because previously there was only a couple of students in each generation that were able to really go by faith with their teacher. It's really easy to go to a judo instructor and they tell you to move like this and not like that. I used to do boxing in college and I thought, I'm probably a really good fighter. But when I went and learned with the boxing instructor, I was very angry because he made me do these poses and these moves, which I found really that's not the way you fight. According to my mind, according to my heart, what I thought if I would step in the ring with somebody and I need to attack, the way that I would attack was completely something that would really get me just smashed in the ring. And therefore, I had to really nullify to this old guy who I wasn't sure if he really knew what he's talking about. And he showed me moves and got me used to kind of a new habit, new ways of standing that are actually really awkward. And Kabbalists of previous generations were able, and it was only like one or two. It wasn't like millions, thousands and millions of people like it is today. but Kabbalists of previous generations because what was there in life, really? If you had bread on the table, it was good. You had a wife and kids at home. There was nothing more to life. If you had a point in the heart, there wasn't all sorts of things that maybe I should also get wealthy and maybe I should also do this and do that. There was nothing else to do in life. So if you had a point in the heart, really, you could come and study the wisdom of Kabbalah and know that pretty much that was it. There was nothing else to do in life. So Kabbalists were able to come to their teachers and really be like me with that boxing teacher. And boxing is easy because it's just something with my physical body. If it's talking about my whole internality, my whole approach to life, my attitude to reality, to the Creator, and needing to reach it, then it's much more difficult to take the teacher's advice because it's against my ego, it's against my being. But Kabbalists, there was a few that were able to do this, and they were able to learn from these special texts really above reason, above their minds and hearts, and let the reforming light that comes from the study just work on them and basically work with the teacher just like a baby. In our generation, we're not so capable of doing that, and that's why the wisdom of Kabbalah can be revealed now, because we're in such a state where everything that Kabbalah says can essentially be proven by science. Not proven, but there's enough science that I can box myself in to seeing that really it has to be like the Kabbalists say. Before Kabbalists, Nachmanides, they were writing about the Big Bang. What Big Bang? They were writing about the speed of light. What? Speed of light. Nobody knew. There was no physics. There was no understanding of this. Evolutionary biology, the Ari wrote about. He wrote that we descended from the monkey and how the different, basically the mechanics of biological evolution. And there was no such thing in people's minds. We exist, and we don't ask why we exist, or we exist because the Creator said there shall be a deer, and there shall be a bear, and there shall be a man, and the world only existed for 5,000 years. So all of these things, you couldn't use them as a way of bringing people to the wisdom of Kabbalah and letting them understand that there's really something to it. So today, we have physicists that tell us about all of these 10 dimensions that Kabbalists talk about. They tell us we can study how particles work, and we can see that the wisdom of Kabbalah says the same thing. And the more studies come out, that we talked about the Nicholas Christakis study that shows how everybody's influencing everyone else, and they studied it for 30 years, and they showed how when I get fat, it's actually because somebody in my social network got fat. It increases my chances by like 50%, and I don't even realize that it's working on me. So the more studies that actually come out, the more physics advances, the more biology advances, the better it is for the dissemination of the wisdom of Kabbalah. Because then we can actually talk in a down-to-earth way without the student having to believe what the teacher is saying. So in short, the state of Kabbalah is amenable to the state of the generation. That we are very confused with a lot of different things, that even though we don't get pleasure, we keep chasing pleasures and we don't get fulfillment from it, yet we keep on doing that because we're confused, because we're in a society that tells us that's good, that that's worthwhile, and it's not like 1,000 years ago where there was nothing to do but reveal the Creator. You have a method for revealing the Creator? Rabash once said that if you would tell people that there was such a method 100 years ago, because he came from that generation, there's nobody that wouldn't take it because there was nothing else to do. There's nothing else to do in life. So the wisdom of Kabbalah today can be revealed to everyone precisely because we have all of these distractions, and we have something over which to have a little bit of free choice. Because although the wisdom of Kabbalah can be proven, everything we say can be backed up by science, even when we talk about perception of reality, that the whole world is inside of you and outside of me are only my desires, all of this can be now proven by science. So it's as if no free choice. But because we have so many distractions, therefore we have free choice. And this was the whole purpose of this descent through the worlds, whereby the Creator is concealed, was to bring a person to free choice. Because if I would feel what's up here in the spiritual realities, I wouldn't have free choice. There is not a person in the world who wouldn't go for it. As Bala Sulam says, one would chop their hands and legs off 8 times a day just to taste even for a second what's in the spiritual reality. So we're in a state of free choice.
Great. We have a question from Elizabeth, and she is asking, when I look at your diagram of the steps from Creator down and back up to the Creator, I think of the story of Jacob's dream of a ladder with angels coming down and angels going up. Was that a Kabbalistic story?
Yeah. So one of the Kabbalistic texts was the Torah, and also the writings, including the prophets and Psalms and everything that's included in the Old Testament, as it's called. So the Torah and the writings and the prophets. These are all Kabbalistic writings. They all have an inner Kabbalistic meaning. And indeed, the ladder, this is why Bala Sulam is called master of the ladder, because there was a ladder. People didn't know before, but this ladder has 125 degrees, and it's the ladder of ascent. And what are the angels? An angel is a force. So gravity is a force. There are other forces that we don't know about. There are forces that are moving my hands right now. If I will get home tonight and suddenly have a craving for vanilla ice cream, that's also a force. We know from biology that this is a force within me. Where does it arise from? It doesn't arise from me. Who am I, first of all? But where does it arise from? It arises from somewhere. I don't know where. And then I just fulfill it. And gravity works upon me, and I'm living with gravity. And there are many forces. So these angels are forces. Gravity is called an angel. And when we start entering the spiritual ladder, and even before that we require forces. These are the forces of creation. Everything happens by forces, and of course the strongest forces in reality are the most hidden. So if you have atomic energy, for example, it's something that as if didn't exist before we found out about it. Or if you had electricity, it existed all around us. We only figured out how to harness it. So there exists a system of what's called angels, but they're forces. They're not human beings. They don't float around with wings or anything like that. But this is the human language that we can use to describe these forces. Why? Because if Jacob is talking about some kind of angel, what does it mean? And he said it has a human form. What does it mean? It means this is the only way that he could describe a force that has a certain system of governance, just like a human being has a brain and a body, and it works according to certain principles, and they're not material. So it's exactly the same thing. So let's go back to Bala Sulam from the teaching of the wisdom of Kabbalah in its essence.
Okay, so the source will be Kabbalah for the Student on page 45, the teaching of wisdom of Kabbalah in its essence, a section called Giving Permission. I am glad that I have been born in such a generation when it is permitted to disclose the wisdom of truth. And should you ask, how do I know that it is permitted? I will reply that I have been given permission to disclose. Until now, The ways by which it is possible to publicly engage and to fully explain each word have not been revealed to any sage. We deem it is as dependent not on the greatness of the sage, but on the state of the generation.
Yes, so we have basically two systems. We have a system from above downwards that includes certain books called the Torah, the Zohar, and say the writings of the Ari, and Bala Sulam's organization of those writings, study of 10 Sfirot, Talmud Asher Sfirot, and those talk about the Kankat nation down to our world through the degrees. And from our world upwards, we have what are called articles and letters. So Kabbalists used these. They used these texts. And through the guidance with the teacher, through following him, like internally, like me with my boxing coach, and learning how to create the correct environment, they used the surrounding light from these texts to nevertheless rise through the spiritual degrees. In our time, we receive from Bala Sulam and from Rabash, they're truly the only Kabbalists who wrote for the ascent. There were other writers that, such as Ramchal, that tried to write, but it comes out more like religious texts. They're not that helpful, basically because Kabbalists like him wrote for his students. He wrote for his students in a language that they understood. You know, they were all experts in the Talmud and the Torah. He wrote for them according to their desires, according to their kilim. But he wasn't writing it in such a way for it to be disseminated and somebody who was not in that environment to be able to use it. Kabbalah, only Bala Sulam and Rabash, especially Bala Sulam, starts out by giving us basically what we're going through in this course, in brief. He gives us all of these articles. And by the way, this is an indispensable text. This is not a beginner's book. This is a book that really will accompany you all the way up the spiritual ladder. And it includes everything. And there's articles like Time to Act, disclosing a portion covering 2, the essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah, the teaching of Kabbalah and its essence, body and soul, the Arvut, Matan Torah. There was no such thing in reality before Bala Sulam. Nobody wrote, and even his contemporary, another great Kabbalist called Rav Kook, who was also great, really envied him. Bala Sulam and him were friends. He really envied Bala Sulam. He didn't understand how Bala Sulam could write so simply in such a way that there's a mechanics and a system, and it speaks to the heart, but it gives internal direction and really directs a person towards the upper worlds. So these articles and also letters, because Kabbalist letters before were concealed, they never let anybody see them. Anybody who would receive a letter from a Kabbalist would keep it to himself. You know, it would, if not burn it. So there was really no access to these letters. And also they weren't written from this point of this special soul called Bala Sulam that was able to write in such a way that it would contain the surrounding light. So these are the two systems that we have, from above to below and from below upwards. So, do we have another question?
Yeah, let's go to Mexico right now. And the question you were mentioning forces such as gravity. Are these forces going to be explained in order for us to identify within our daily life?
Well, the thing is, all of these forces exist within us. And, for example, I can give a corporeal example. How do we receive pleasure, any kind of pleasure? It's only by, and we know this from science, that I need to eat some food so that certain connections will be created in my brain, and it's not really dependent upon the food. And if where the actual pleasure comes from the connection in my brain, that this connection, how they describe it in science, is that it releases certain brain chemicals, and these I feel as joy. Or what is it that I see some beautiful person, some woman, and suddenly all of these things happen inside of me. All that happened was that the external reality, seemingly external reality, created these connections in my brain and then releases some juices inside of me that I say, it's pleasure because I'm looking at her. In short, all of the forces exist within us. They're all possible. It's just how do I arrange such a reality that will release these forces. And for now, we only know about how to do those simple things that I'm talking about. I can look at a woman. I can, look at a baby that a mother just sees her baby and all of a sudden it releases oxytocin and she feels, such pleasure. Or I watch a movie and it's such a sequence of connections within me that it releases, pleasure. It's all about reaching the pleasure. In a baby, that disgusting milk that makes me want to vomit releases pleasure. Also, someone who's used to something, like my teacher said that his mom, although they were very wealthy, they were doctors and no money problems whatsoever, but for his mom, pleasure was sitting with a simple cup of, I don't remember, hot water or chicken broth and some hot water, just plain hot water. For her, that was pleasure because it's something that she associates with the release of these chemicals in the brain. We can explain everything scientifically. So all of the forces of pleasure and for fulfillment, and fulfillments that we don't know anything about yet. Perhaps there are fulfillments, perhaps there is a way to break into an upper reality, that if I would just connect the right things, that I actually the reality unzips, it splits in half, and I open up a world of limitless pleasures. It all exists inside of me. The blockages are in me. And I need to gradually uncover these. Just like I said, that we can only enjoy adjacent pleasures. First, mom's milk, then applesauce, then peas, then later on steaks, then after steaks, some terrible music, nursery children, some nursery music, later on Mozart. But I can't skip to Mozart. I have to go from one thing to the next. First, my son likes to read books about construction. He likes cars and trucks. Later on, he'll be into Shakespeare, but one step after another. So we have to gradually understand that there are new fulfillments that exist, and that the whole of human history was like mom's milk. Not even mom's milk, but and now we have to gradually be introduced to something that we didn't yet see as important. And just like I won't go down to, eating baby food anymore. Why? Because I have more important pleasures. Actually, the applesauce is pretty good, but I have much more important pleasures to attend to. So we have to understand that there's something called the revelation of the Creator. And this was the purpose of all of those mini pleasures, those minute pleasures that we felt. It was to gradually have us start working towards something greater. So these forces exist in us, and how to identify them? See, the problem is how do I explain to my son that there's something really good called Shakespeare, or to my 7-month-old that later on, sorry, it's ridiculous, but later on you'll enjoy Scotch? I can't tell her if she would even smell it. In fact, she's sick right now, so we have to give her antibiotics, and she's getting better, but we have to give her something. First of all, she's only had mom's milk so far. Now, what did we do? We put antibiotics in her bottle, and she started to associate with that bottle this disgusting antibiotics, and she doesn't want the bottle at all anymore. So, in short, and she would respond the same way, obviously, to anything like that we consider pleasure, Scotch or some special cheese. There's no way to talk about it. So Kabbalists talk to us about it through their writings, and they tell us there's something called Yesod, Hod, Netzach, Keter. There's something called the world of Asiyah, the world of Yetzirah, and it's really delicious, but you have to want it. So let's go to a reading of Bala Sulam, because it actually talks about this. No, we don't have it, but it's item 155 from the study of the 10 Sefirot, so maybe, Chris, you can find it. So the Kabbalists tell us that when we start, just like we have a reality now that we can arrange, and I want to arrange it in the best possible way. I want to arrange it so that there's beautiful people around me, so that there's beautiful friends around me, so that there's food, nice dishes, and that I will interact with these. And because I interact with them, seemingly, maybe it's a placebo effect, but because I imagine that I'm interacting with these pleasures, it thus creates some phenomenon in me that makes me say, So the Kabbalists tell us that we also need to take their advice, and they will give us certain actions that are not realistic, that don't sound any better than those positions that the boxer coach gave to me, and that these include having a certain circle of friends who are studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, and that I need to have something called a workshop, which you will later be introduced to. Either you'll have a physical place, or if you can't have a physical place, then at least you'll have a virtual space. We have a really good online platform that you can use. And the more you can realize it, physical connection obviously it's a 5-sensory experience. If I'm in love with some woman, is it sufficient for me to talk on the phone to her? No, I need to at least be in the same room with her. And if I'm longing to see my best friend from college, I want to be together with him, not just to talk on the phone. We have to meet up because I want to connect with him because it's a bigger sensation. And you will all have a chance. I want to mention also we're having a convention in July, and I recommend, it's in New Jersey, I recommend to try to go to this. I was forced to my first convention. I was actually part of the San Francisco group. I was kind of, maybe I'll come. I didn't really understand, physically why I need to come. I thought, no, I'll watch it online. It's fine. Also, to even come to the physical group, I didn't want to. I was kind of tricked because of, I'll tell you later, but basically, if I have the opportunity to organize my environment, just like I said, we organize the food, we organize different things to create a sensation. If I organize my environment, as the Kabbalists tell me, just like a baby that gets stuck in its high chair and doesn't want to be there, but then you kind of airplane in some peas. So if I take the Kabbalist advices with special books, and a teacher and a group and certain interactions that I don't really understand why they're putting me through these exercises, but the Kabbalists tell us that this was the only way that people revealed the spiritual reality in the past. I take their advice, and gradually I can start feeling that reality step by step, pleasure by pleasure, just like the food at first tastes kind of gross. Also, when I was in my first workshop, I really didn't want to be in there. I did not want to be in a workshop. But gradually you start having sensations, and then more sensations, and then later on you also feel what the Kabbalists are writing about.
Do you want to go to questions?
I think so, because we're running out of time.
Let's go to Elsie. In other words, beauty of nature or music, written by good, inspired composers, which lift the spirit to a higher sense and realm, is a force put into each of us by our Creator in order to attract us to Him, to wholeness, to spiritual attainment?
I don't know about Creator. If we look at the progression of music, we see that you can't jump from, some natives like beating on a drum and going, doing like whatever dance they do and, however they like, you can't jump from that to Mozart. Why? Because I can only get to an adjacent pleasure and enjoy an adjacent pleasure. There was a symphony called The Rites of Spring that in the 1920s, I believe it was, in France, this composer, when it was played for the first time, people in the crowd started screaming. There was like a riot in this sophisticated, because it was something. So today it was already in Disney's Fantasia. You play it for children. It's no problem. But to them, it was something that was like a leap from what they were used to. So there was not yet a vessel for it, for that pleasure. And this is why songwriters, if they're trying to write something really ahead of their time, you see that they can't. It has to be a step-by-step progression. You have like 10 years that are all the same, like doo-wop, 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 doo-wop. It's like 10 years of doo-wop, doo-wops. And until finally you can have a different kind of music. And there's a progression because you have to develop the kilim. So even without a creator, we develop these kilim for new kinds of pleasures, and then we can appreciate higher and higher. Well, higher and higher, but it's at least a development that can evoke more complex sensations. So you see, if you go to some island where there's nobody, you have just kind of beating on a drum and, some chanting or whatever it is. Later on, you have something like Bach that's all over the place, all kinds of different, it's really kind of resembling nature. It's resembling the way nature interacts, that everything is harmonious, and anything that you changes all sorts of things because it's an integral system, so it gets closer and closer to nature. So in this, it's elevated because we can say it's elevated because it gets closer to the way that nature is really built. So I don't think that, music is holy or anything like that. It's just one of the pleasures that develops, and some music can put us in a good mood. Some music can put us in a, kind of violent mood or a peaceful mood. So,
a question from Illinois. So now, using our five senses, can we perceive the pleasure of the Creator through them, or must we develop other higher senses to do that?
Elizabeth?
We're talking about the corporal pleasures.
Mm-hmm. One more time?
If we use the five senses right now that we have, sight, taste, etc., can we feel actually the Creator, or do we have to develop a new five senses in order to really feel what the Creator is?
I have to develop a new sense which contains five senses that put in relation to that sense, they make my five senses like a dream. And in those senses, I discover that I cannot experience the true reality any more than I was able to experience a true reality in that dream. They are much more tangible. Even though we think that this is like the rock hard reality, these senses are much more tangible. And everything is relative. We can't imagine this reality being like a dream because we've always lived in this reality. But when we discover this new sense, we discover a much more concrete reality, such that we say that this reality we lived in is not true. It's not real.
Question from Margot. Are these forces within us driven by the universe, or our Creator, so that He is taking us a step closer, like our desires to know more about Him, this need to understand Him, etc.? Is pure pleasure to me right now like never before?
Is pure pleasure to me right now like never? Okay, gotcha. The whole of reality is for us to discover the Creator. It's such a joke that later on everyone's going to laugh. That we existed in this life and we had all of these imaginary goals and we have to accumulate experience from generation to generation. And we have to live many lifetimes and forget that we've lived those many lifetimes, but the fact that we lived them nevertheless remains in us. It remains as something that's concealed. Later on, it's opened up why we lived all of those lives. First of all, this life, of course, will understand every single thing that happened to us, every moment, that even the spider web that's up in the corner was perfect. It should have been in that corner. It couldn't have been any better. Everything that happened to me was just right. When we discover the upper reality, of course, we discover all the lifetimes that we lived in this world and that they were gradually accumulating in me, and that I don't need to remember that last lifetime I was an enchanting prince or Napoleon. It doesn't matter, but these accumulate and accumulate in me as some sort of unwillingness to be satisfied with any of that. That now, if you tell me I can be the prince, no, I don't want it. I don't know why. I just don't want it. Or you can go and conquer like Napoleon did. For him, it was like really like if I can just do that and my name in history. Try to sell that to, a millennial. Do they want that? Who cares? To control people, to control the world, to conquer. It's not worthwhile. And the generation together accumulates all of this knowledge that they don't know why they're not interested in anything that their parents think is important. The generation gap grows wider because this is the development of the generations, that generation after generation, through the cumulative experience that we have in life, we realize that we can't receive pleasure in that way, that even if I will conquer the entire world, then what? I'll still be stuck in this world. And furthermore, because of this accumulation of lifetimes, I also have this sensation that even though I don't know what happens after death, I have this sensation that it's not like an upper heaven or something like that. I have this sensation, even though it's not conscious to me, that it's not just blackness. It doesn't just end there. No, I come back. I live again. I grow up through suffering. I get confused again with all kinds of things. And I don't want to be confused anymore. And this gradually spreads. This is why now there's depression spreading worldwide. It's because humanity gradually comes to this conclusion, but they don't have a solution. And this is why, some say Kabbalah shouldn't be concealed. It should still be concealed. It can't be revealed. No. And you can find it in the writings of the Kabbalists that after the 1500s, it should be revealed more and more. And Bala Sulam wrote that in 1995, it has to permeate the entire world, starting from 1995. And that's why we have thousands and thousands of people that now study with us. Because humanity reached this state where it's ready. And if you don't give them a solution, then they just want to die. But even to commit suicide, if I have this reshimo from the past, that I know that committing suicide also won't help. I can't escape it. It probably will be worse for me. And this, it's like an intuition, that it doesn't even become an intuition. It's just a sensation that, no, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't waste my time with that. The whole program of creation is to bring us to this point. And from this point, we are able to sit like the boxing student with the Kabbalist and hear about a method that, although it's strange to me and it's not delicious, like the peas that my little daughter won't eat, that it's actually good, and that I should actually begin tasting it. I should try to taste it. No, it's just like after we gave her the bottle, she with the antibiotics in it, she no longer trusted the bottle. So we're basically screwed, because sometimes I'm alone with her and she needs milk. So I created this tube. I gave her a different kind of bottle that would basically like flood into her mouth, but because she does like kung fu against receiving the bottle, like won't taste it. This is how humanity was towards the wisdom of Kabbalah, and this is why it was completely concealed. But I got this tube that was enough that I could get it past the guards, and got just a little bit in her mouth, and she saw, it's not yucky milk. And then I was able to feed her because she just tasted it a bit. So so this whole like depression and everything that people reach in this life, and despair of everything, and crisis, financial crisis, which will also explode even more. It's a complete card castle. All of this is just to prepare a person to be willing to taste. Just try. I don't want it, but just try. And then we're willing to try. We're willing to taste a little bit. And this little bit of taste makes us a little bit more trusting of the bottle, that, okay, Papa's not always feeding me disgusting things. And maybe once I try some food, then I'll be willing to try other things. And this is the way we start discovering the forces that the Kabbalists talk about.
Miriam has not Miriam, but Elsie has a good question. She's speaking about going out and speaking to people like politicians, et cetera, in regards to telling them about the wisdom of Kabbalah. Her question is basically boiled down to, when will humanity reach the point of readiness?
The leaders won't reach a point of readiness because the main thing for them is to protect their chairs. Those who are the most egoistic in our world are those that can reach politics. The people that can reach the top of society, they're the most egoistic. They have the ego of this world in the greatest quantity. And this qualitative egoism, the desire that is just like, I don't know what those old guys in the Senate are, even doing for me to like millennials today, for me to really like effort in that. I'll take it, if you want to make me senator, but for me to really try, why? Okay. Those who have the point in the heart, who are despaired of this world, it's a qualitative ego. So it's the biggest ego that exists, but it's so big that it can't even make efforts for its, and the more it grows, really, it can't be, even if I'm a CEO, really I discover such possibilities before me that really to control these things, to put out another app, to speak at some whatever, it's a very small egoism. But for this world, for those that are still on this plane, the biggest ego is he who can reach, say, to be president. And what he's saying and what policies he's accepting are those which will protect my chair, and nothing more. If it's to give women rights, then I'm fully on board with that. If it's to make gay marriage, then I'm fully on board with that. There's no other calculation except to which camp should I divide myself, and then what should I say? And we see how politicians always change their attitude. They say they're going to do one thing. They enter a government system. They realize they can't just do whatever they want. And there are more conditions if you want to protect your chair. And it's also not, such a democracy as people think. Rather, it's a system that the president is the spokesperson for. And if you want to protect your chair, then you need to speak in such a way and advocate such and such. And if you want to get reelected, you better take this cause and not that cause. And you better learn who is actually pulling the strings behind the scenes. And that there is a general direction that those who are in power, in order to retain that power and in order to not have mass chaos, have to keep that direction. So you want to go to them with the wisdom of Kabbalah, they absolutely will not accept it. First of all, you can't go to anyone who doesn't have a point in the heart. They will have no idea what you're talking about. They'll think you're trying to convert them to Judaism or give them some strange philosophy. And to actually implement it, of course, by the same token, if it doesn't come from below, such that there's such a demand for the wisdom of Kabbalah that if I don't, institute it in the education system, I will lose my seat, then it's simply not going to fly. So it only works through the point in the heart, through dissemination to those who already have a desire for it.
There's a couple of things that I want to do. Is one, to make an advice. The topic tonight was books. And very simply, if I were you, I'd put a book all over the house. I'd put one book into your living room. I'd put one book into your bedroom. I'd put a book here or whatever it is. You don't have to mark the pages, but there's a reason why I'm saying that that's what I would do, because it really helped me out. I hope it would help you out. Try it. See what it does. But I want to go back to something. You mentioned a convention. And a convention is another piece of information, tidbit that, just like books and scattering them around, a convention is huge. It is not simply just to throw out there and let it slip in one ear and out the other ear. It's a huge part of your growth. And the ancient Kabbalists went to conventions a long time ago and everything else, and nothing has really changed. But there's a reason for these things taking place. Rob Lightman is coming out to New Jersey, and he'll be at the convention. He's doing that as a favor for us, you and I, and it's no more than a huge favor. And what we do with it is very, very important, and it will really help one develop in their studies of Kabbalah. So we'll talk more about that, but I think it's really important that we give them a little bit more information about how many people about.
1,000 people.
Right. And are you going to be there?
Of course.
Great, of course. But that's what's important to me. Is it's not like, will you be there? Well, I'm not sure. It's of course. Well, how come it's of course?
Because once you've gone to a convention, you understand that there's such benefit that no matter what my plane ticket costs, I learned this the first time I went to a convention, because it was like $900 to buy the ticket. And the group here said, we already bought you a ticket. And obviously I had to pay them back because I would feel guilty. But they knew I was ready, and they bought me a ticket. And I went, even though I really didn't want to go, because I was new to the wisdom of Kabbalah. And afterwards, I felt that even if it had cost me $10,000, there was no price that I could put on this convention. And truly, each convention is a huge leap forward. And especially if you're new to the wisdom of Kabbalah, if you've decided that you want to study this path, this is the path for you, it's really impossible that you would miss it. And it's such advancement that we can study here for another 10 semesters. It won't be equal to the convention. And I recommend right now, while the tickets are relatively cheap because they're only going to go up now, I recommend just buy that ticket. Don't keep delaying it, because once you buy your ticket, you're invested. You're invested, and you will already see that you're advancing more quickly in the meantime up until that convention. Up until when I'm still debating it, internally it's as if I haven't committed and I'm not exactly there. But once I make that move, I'm already invested in it, and because I've invested, my ego actually forces me to get something out of it. It forces me to advance more quickly.
I know one of the classes that I was teaching, one of the students said, Chris, you sound like you're a salesperson. What the heck? Spirituality is not for sale. And I'm going, I agree with you, but as far as a salesman, I wish I was the best salesman possible, because I'd sell you this ticket to the Congress. Yeah. I'm not shy about it. Do I have something to sell? Yeah, I have books to sell. I'm telling you it's important, and I'm telling you that the Congress is very important too. What you do with it, it's up to you.
So with that, we have our announcement. Your next lesson will be on Wednesday, May 13th. Bnei Baruch Kabbalah centers and campuses in North America are offering opportunities for you to meet, socialize, or study with other students of Kabbalah. Currently, we have events and lessons planned in Brooklyn, New York, Orlando, Florida, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, California. Invite your friends or family who might be interested. Visit campus.kabbalah.info for details of upcoming events. Here in San Francisco, we will have a campus starting this Thursday, 7 p.m. at 22 Monterey Boulevard, San Francisco. It's the Glen Park BART stop, so it's an easy BART stop, and we hope you will come if you're nearby. Plans for the North American Kabbalah Convention have been finalized. It will be in Parsippany, New Jersey on July 24th through 26th. Join us for 3 days of lessons with Dr. Lightman, Kabbalistic music, activities, and more. There will likely also be a lesson or event on Thursday night before the Congress starts. We will keep you posted as more information becomes available. Please take any unanswered questions to the forum, where our instructors and moderators will be happy to answer them for you. And with that,
good night, happy Mother's Day, and all take care.